What if the very first act of creation was not obedience but rebellion? Genesis 1:27 tells us that God created humanity in his image, male and female together. But just one chapter later, Genesis 2:22 describes woman being formed from Adam's rib. Two creation stories, two beginnings, and buried between them, a name that was erased, Lilith. Most people assume the Bible's account of creation is seamless and complete, but ancient Jewish texts, mystical traditions, and fragments from forgotten scrolls suggest something else entirely. Something happened before Eve, something that could not be allowed to remain in the official story. In this investigation, we will walk three paths. First, we will uncover what these ancient sources reveal about the being who came before Eve. Then, we will explore why her existence threatened the very structure of divine order. And finally, we will ask what changes when we realize the first human to ever say no to God was not a man, but a woman. And once we understand this first layer, the real story begins. Before Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, there was silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of something deliberately removed. Scholars of the Kabbalah speak of a world that existed before our world, a reality that was dismantled, its pieces scattered, its memory nearly erased. The Hebrew term is Ulam HaTohu, the world of chaos. In this formless space, something took shape, not from clay, not from rib, but from the same divine breath that would later animate Adam. Her name was Lilith. She was not a mistake. She was not a mistake. She was not a rough draft. She was the first attempt at balance, the first mirror held up to the face of creation itself. And what she saw in that mirror changed everything. The alphabet of Ben Sira, a medieval Jewish text, preserves her story in fragments. It describes her as formed from the earth, just as Adam was, equal in origin, equal in essence. The text is controversial, often dismissed by mainstream scholars, but it survives. And survival means something. It means someone, somewhere, believed this truth was worth preserving. Lilith was not created to serve. She was created to stand beside. And when she realized that standing beside was being reinterpreted as kneeling below, she made a choice. She chose herself. She chose her own voice. She chose to leave. But why would this story be erased? Why would scribes, rabbis, and church fathers work so hard to remove her from the canon? Because Lilith's existence raises a question that religious authority cannot afford. If the first woman was equal and chose to leave, then what does that say about the second woman, Eve, who stayed? It suggests that obedience is a choice, that submission is not natural, that the structure of hierarchy is not divine inevitability, but human construction. Lilith's story is dangerous not because she was evil, it is dangerous because she was free. In the Zohar, the foundational text of Jewish mysticism, Lilith appears again. Not as a footnote, but as a force. She is described as a figure who exists outside the boundaries of Eden, beyond the reach of Adam's authority, untouched by the curse that would later fall on Eve. The Zohar does not call her a demon. It calls her the first Eve. This phrase is staggering in its implications. It suggests that there was a version of partnership that failed, not because of sin, but because of incompatibility. Adam wanted a companion who would reflect his will. Lilith wanted a companion who would respect her own. The Talmud hints at her too, though always in whispers. In Tractate Shabbat, there is a reference to a night spirit, a figure who moves through the darkness and cannot be controlled by prayer or ritual. Some scholars argue this is Lilith, others deny it, but the pattern is undeniable. Wherever you find ancient Jewish literature, you find traces of her. She is the shadow that will not disappear, the name that keeps resurfacing, the question that will not stay buried. And the longer you look, the more you realize that her erasure was not complete. It was only enough to keep most people from asking. But not everyone. Subscribe now, because what comes next will reveal not just who Lilith was, but why the powers that shaped Scripture needed her forgotten. This is not just history. This is the anatomy of a cover-up. Chapter 2. the mirror that should not exist. There is a moment in every awakening when you stop seeing yourself through another's eyes and start seeing yourself as you truly are. For Lilith, that moment came in the garden, not at the tree of knowledge, not at the serpent's whisper, but earlier, in a place the texts call the mirror of fire. This was not a physical object, it was a spiritual threshold, a point of consciousness where the created could glimpse the creator's reflection. And in that reflection, Lilith saw something she was never supposed to see. She saw equality. Genesis 1:26 records God saying, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness." The plural is strange. Theologians have debated it for centuries. Some say it reflects the Trinity, others suggest it indicates a divine council, but the mystical traditions offer another interpretation. The plural reflects multiplicity within the divine essence itself. And if God contains multiplicity, then so does the image of God. Lilith understood this. She saw in the mirror of fire that she was not a lesser copy. She was a full iteration, not a reflection of Adam, but a reflection of the same source that made Adam. This was her first sin, if you can call it that. Not disobedience, but awareness. The mirror of fire appears in several esoteric Jewish texts, though never by that exact name. The Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, describes the process by which divine light is channeled into form. It speaks of Sephirot, emanations of God's essence, and of thresholds where the infinite meets the finite. Lilith, according to these traditions, crossed one of those thresholds. She was not supposed to. She was supposed to remain in the innocence of Eden, unaware of her own divinity. But she looked, and once you look, you cannot unlook. Adam never approached the mirror. He did not need to. He was content with his role. He had named the animals. He had walked with God in the cool of the evening. He had everything he needed except one thing, a partner who would confirm his centrality. Lilith refused to confirm it. She refused to be the supporting character in his story, and this refusal was unbearable, not because Adam was cruel, but because the structure of Eden required agreement. It required that everyone accept their place. Lilith's consciousness shattered that agreement. The alphabet of Ben Sira records a confrontation. Adam demands that Lilith lie beneath him. She refuses. He insists it is the natural order. She responds with a question that echoes through centuries. Why should I lie beneath you when I was made from the same earth? This is not rebellion for rebellion's sake. This is logic. This is the voice of someone who has seen the truth and cannot pretend otherwise. Adam appeals to God. The text is clear. He does not appeal for reconciliation. He appeals for enforcement. He wants Lilith returned, subdued, corrected. But God does not force her back. Instead, 3 angels are sent, and their failure tells us everything. Like this video if you have ever felt the cost of seeing something others refuse to acknowledge, because what Lilith saw in the mirror of fire was not a secret, it was a truth. The secret was that this truth had to be hidden. The mirror of fire is also referenced in Christian mysticism, though the language is different. Meister Eckhart, the medieval German theologian, wrote about the ground of the soul, a place where the human spirit and the divine essence are indistinguishable. He was accused of heresy for this teaching. Why? Because if the soul is already divine, then hierarchies become optional. Obedience becomes negotiable. Authority loses its foundation. Lilith reached the ground of her soul, and from that ground she could not be ruled. In the Gnostic traditions there is a similar concept. The divine spark trapped within matter. The goal of the spiritual life is to awaken this spark, to remember your origin, to reject the false gods who claim dominion over you. Lilith did not need a serpent to awaken her. She awakened herself, and that perhaps is why her story had to be erased. Because if one person can wake up without permission, then anyone can. And if anyone can, then the entire system is at risk. Chapter 3. The first no. Every revolution begins with a single refusal. Not violence, not manifestos, just the quiet, immovable word, no. Lilith spoke that word in the Garden of Eden, and the shockwave is still moving through history. Her no was not shouted. It was not dramatic. It was calm. It was clear. It was calm. And it was the first time a human being ever told God through his appointed structure that his plan was not acceptable. This was not disobedience in the way Eve's would be. This was something older, something deeper. This was sovereignty. The text from the alphabet of Ben Sira describes Lilith uttering the ineffable name of God and flying away from Eden. To speak the name was to invoke power. It was reserved for priests, for sacred moments, for the holiest of contexts. Lilith used it to escape. She weaponized the sacred. She turned the tools of control into instruments of liberation. This act is echoed in countless myths across cultures. Isis speaks the secret name of Ra to gain power over him. Prometheus steals fire from the gods. In every case, the crime is not theft, it is knowledge. It is the refusal to remain ignorant. Why did God allow her to leave? This is the question theologians avoid. If God is all-powerful, he could have stopped her. If he is all-knowing, he foresaw her rebellion, yet she left. One interpretation is that God respected her will. Another is that God could not stop her without violating the very freedom he had granted. A third, more unsettling interpretation comes from Gnostic texts. In these writings, the God of Eden is not the true God. He is the demiurge, a lesser deity who mistakes himself for the ultimate. Lilith's escape in this reading is not rebellion against the divine. It is escape from a pretender. It is ascension. Adam's response is telling. He does not follow her. He does not argue further. He mourns according to some texts, but he does not act. Why? Because on some level, he understands. He understands that what Lilith wants, he cannot give. She wants to be seen as an equal, and he cannot see her that way because he has been formed in a system where equality is not the design. He is not a villain. He is not a villain. He is a product, and Lilith refuses to be a product. So she walks away, not in anger, not in despair, in clarity. Comment below if you have ever walked away from something that everyone else said you should accept. Because Lilith's story is not ancient history. It is a pattern. It is a template. It is happening right now, in 1,000 different forms, wherever someone chooses themselves over a system that demands their surrender. The space Lilith entered after leaving Eden is described as the outer darkness, or the wilderness beyond the gates. It was not hell. It was unmarked territory, a place outside the boundaries of divine oversight, or at least outside the boundaries of the Eden experiment. In Jewish mysticism, this space is called the Sitra Achra, the other side. It is not inherently evil. It is simply other. It is where things go when they do not fit the pattern, and Lilith fit no pattern. She was the first refugee, the first exile, the first being to choose the unknown over the unbearable. In that wilderness, she was alone, but not for long, because the wilderness, it turns out, was not empty. It was inhabited. By whom? By others who had refused, by angels who had fallen, by gods who had been forgotten, by forces and names and powers that Eden had never acknowledged. Lilith found a community in exile, and in that community she found something she never had in the garden. She found respect. Chapter 4. The desert of forgotten gods beyond the gates of Eden. There is a place the scriptures do not name, a desert, not of sand, but of spirit, a realm where the rejected gather, where the stories that do not fit are stored, where the gods who were replaced still whisper. This is where Lilith went, not to hide, not to sulk, but to learn, because if Eden could not teach her what she needed, then she would find teachers elsewhere, and she did. They were called the Elohim, the forgotten gods, the minor deities, the ones who existed before monotheism erased them. The word Elohim appears over 2,000 times in the Hebrew Bible. It is usually translated as God, but it is plural. It means gods. In the earliest layers of Israelite religion, before the reforms of King Josiah, before the Babylonian exile, the Israelites worshipped many gods. Yahweh was one among them, the chief, perhaps, but not the only. Archaeological evidence confirms this. Inscriptions found in Kentelet Adred mention Yahweh and his Asherah. Asherah was a goddess. Asherah was a goddess, a consort, a partner. Monotheism did not begin with Abraham. It was constructed over centuries, through violence, through editing, through deliberate forgetting, and the gods who were forgotten did not disappear. They went into the wilderness, and there Lilith met them. These Elohim taught her things Eden never could. They taught her the language of wind, which is the language of change. They taught her the voice of shadows, which is the language of hidden things. They taught her the true names of creation, the syllables that hold reality together. In Kabbalistic tradition, creation itself is linguistic. God spoke the world into being. But if creation is language, then language is power. And whoever knows the grammar can rewrite the text. Lilith learned at the grammar. She became fluent in the structure of reality. And with that fluency came the ability to alter, to resist, to reshape. The Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text not included in most Bibles, describes a class of angels called the Watchers. These angels descended to earth and taught humanity forbidden knowledge, metallurgy, astrology, cosmetics, warfare. The knowledge was not evil in itself, but it disrupted the divine plan. It gave humans tools they were not supposed to have. Lilith, according to mystical traditions, learned from these same Watchers. She was not their victim, she was their peer. She sat with them as an equal, and they shared with her the secrets that heaven had tried to bury. Share this video with someone who needs to know that exile is not the end of the story, because in Lilith's case, exile was the beginning. It was in the desert, among the forgotten, that she became who she truly was. One of the Elohim was named Azazel. The book of Leviticus mentions him in a strange ritual. On the Day of Atonement, the high priest would cast lots over 2 goats. One goat was sacrificed to Yahweh. The other was sent into the wilderness, to Azazel. This goat carried the sins of the people. But who was Azazel? A demon, a place, or a deity who still held power in the wilderness? The Book of Enoch is explicit. Azazel was one of the Watchers. He taught humans the art of war. And according to some traditions, he taught Lilith the art of defiance. Another name that surfaces is Naamah. In Jewish legend, she is one of Lilith's companions. Some texts call her a sister, others call her a daughter. Naamah means pleasant, but her reputation is anything but. She is associated with seduction, with the corruption of righteous men, with the blurring of boundaries between the human and the divine. But seduction in these texts is not just sexual, it is intellectual. It is the seduction of ideas, the temptation to think for yourself, to question, to explore. Naamah represents the allure of forbidden knowledge, and she learned that allure from Lilith. In the desert, Lilith did not grow bitter. She grew powerful. She did not seek revenge against Adam or God. She sought understanding. She wanted to know why Eden was designed the way it was, why equality was a threat, why freedom was called rebellion. And the more she learned, the more she realized that Eden was not the center of reality. It was a bordered experiment, a controlled environment. And outside that environment, creation was wilder, stranger, more diverse than Eden ever allowed. Lilith became a citizen of that wilder creation, and she never looked back. Chapter 5, The Serpent's Hidden Children. Lilith did not bear children in the way Eve would. She did not labor in pain, as Genesis 3:16 describes. Her offspring were not flesh. They were spirit, consciousness, legacy. Her children are those who inherit not her body, but her choice, her defiance, her refusal to accept a world that demands their smallness. The serpent in Eden is often seen as an enemy, but what if the serpent was a messenger? What if it came not to destroy, but to continue what Lilith had started? What if the serpent was her emissary, finishing the work she began? Genesis 3, the first one, calls the serpent more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. Crafty. The Hebrew word is arum, which can also mean wise, prudent, or subtle. The serpent does not lie to Eve. It tells her that eating the fruit will make her like God, knowing good and evil. Genesis 13:22 confirms this. After the fruit is eaten, God says, "The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil." The serpent told the truth. It offered knowledge. It offered awakening. Just as Lilith had awakened, the serpent in this reading is not Satan. It is the spirit of Lilith, returning in a new form to finish what could not be finished the first time. In Gnostic texts, the serpent is openly celebrated. The testimony of truth and Gnostic scripture praises the serpent as a liberator. It calls the god of Eden a tyrant and the serpent a hero. This is heresy to Orthodox Christianity, but it makes perfect sense within the framework of Lilith's story. If Lilith represents freedom, then the serpent represents the transmission of that freedom. It does not force Eve to eat, it informs her. It gives her a choice. And Eve, like Lilith, chooses knowledge over ignorance. The difference, of course, is that Eve stays, she eats the fruit, but she remains within the system. She accepts the curse. She accepts the pain of childbirth, the subordination to Adam, the expulsion from Eden. Lilith never accepted any of that. She left before the curse could touch her. So in a sense, Eve is Lilith's incomplete successor. She takes the first step toward awakening, but she does not take the second. She does not leave. And because she does not leave, and because she does not leave, the system survives. The hierarchy remains, the experiment continues, but Lilith's spiritual children do leave. They are the ones who, in every generation, refuse the script they are handed. The revolutionaries who dismantle corrupt systems. They are not born from Lilith's womb. They are born from her example. Her story is their inheritance, and every time someone says, "This is not right and I will not pretend it is," Lilith's lineage continues. Subscribe if you recognize yourself in this lineage, because this is not about ancient mythology. This is about the choice you make every single day, to conform or to awaken, to obey or to question, to accept the narrative or to write your own. The Zohar describes Lilith as the mother of demons. But what is a demon? In the Hebrew Bible, the word often used is shed or sirum, which can mean wild spirits, goat demons, or simply forces that resist divine control. A demon, in this sense, is anything that will not be domesticated, anything that will not bow. Lilith's children, then, are demons only in the eyes of those who demand submission. To themselves, they are free. There is a fascinating parallel in Hindu mythology. The goddess Kali is often depicted as terrifying, bloodthirsty, destructive. That to her devotees, she is the destroyer of ego, the liberator from illusion, the force that breaks chains. Lilith functions similarly. To those who cling to the structures of Eden, she is a nightmare. To those who long for liberation, she is a guide, the same figure. Two interpretations, and the interpretation you choose reveals everything about where you stand. In medieval Europe, Lilith was invoked in protective amulets, especially for pregnant women and infants. The amulets were inscribed with the names of the three angels, Senoi, Sanzanoi, and Semengeloff, who were sent to retrieve her. The belief was that Lilith, in her bitterness, would harm newborns. But another reading is possible. Perhaps Lilith was not attacking children. Perhaps she was calling to them, whispering the same truth she whispered in the garden. You are not bound. You are not owned. You can choose. And the amulets were not protection from Lilith. They were protection from her message. Chapter 6, The Watchers and the Forbidden Alphabet. There are beings in Scripture who exist in the margins, barely mentioned, quickly condemned, never fully explained. The Watchers are among them. Genesis 6:1-4 speaks of the sons of God, who saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful and took them as wives. Their offspring were the Nephilim, giants, mighty men of old. The passage is brief, almost casual, but the Book of Enoch, excluded from most Bibles, expands the story into an epic of cosmic rebellion. The Watchers were angels. 200 of them descended to Mount Hermon and made a pact. They would teach humanity the secrets of heaven, and they did. And for this, they were punished, bound in darkness until the final judgment. But what were these secrets? The Book of Enoch lists them. Azazel taught the making of swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. He taught cosmetics and the beautification of the body. Samiel taught enchantments and root cutting, the use of plants for magic. Omeros taught the resolving of enchantments. Barachiel taught astrology. Kokobiel taught the constellations. Arachiel taught the knowledge of the clouds. Arachiel taught the signs of the earth. Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun. Sariel taught the course of the moon. These were not trivial lessons. They were the foundations of civilization, technology, medicine, astronomy, agriculture. The Watchers gave humanity the tools to transcend their condition, and for this, they were called fallen. Lilith, according to mystical tradition, was among the first to receive this knowledge, not as a passive student, but as an active participant. She did not simply learn, she synthesized. She understood that knowledge is not neutral, it is power, and power, in the hands of the awakened, is transformation. The Watchers recognized in Lilith a kindred spirit. She, like them, had defied the boundaries of her station. She, like them, had chosen knowledge over obedience, so they taught her, and she became dangerous. One teaching stands out above all others: the true names. In Kabbalistic thought, everything in creation has a name, not the name we call it, but the name it truly is, the name that holds its essence. To know the true name of a thing is to have power over it. Adam named the animals in Genesis 2-19, and in doing so, he established dominion. But Lilith learned the names behind the names, the secret syllables, the words that were spoken before the speaking of the world. With these names she could command, she could create, she could uncreate, she could uncreate. This was the knowledge that made her equal, not just to Adam, but to God himself. Like this video, if you have ever discovered a truth that made you powerful and immediately made you a target, because that is the cost of the forbidden alphabet. It changes you, and change is always seen as threat by those who benefit from things staying the same. The concept of a forbidden language appears across cultures. In Islam, there are the 99 names of Allah, but tradition holds that there is a 100th name, the Ism al-Azam, the greatest name. Whoever knows it can perform miracles. It is hidden. In Hinduism, the Vedas speak of mantra, sacred sounds that structure reality. The most powerful mantras are kept secret, passed only from guru to disciple. In Christianity, the name of Jesus is said to hold power. Philippians 2:10 says that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow. Language as power is not a fringe belief. It is embedded in the heart of every major religious tradition. Lilith's mastery of this language made her untouchable. The 3 angels sent to retrieve her could not compel her return because she knew the names that bound them. She spoke, and they could not override her. This is why they returned with a curse instead of a captive. They could not win by force, so they won by narrative. They rewrote her story. They made her the villain. And for thousands of years, that version held. But the original knowledge did not disappear. It was encoded, hidden, passed down through secret societies, mystical orders, and esoteric texts. The Hermetic tradition, the alchemists, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, all of them, in one way or another, trace back to the same source. The knowledge the Watchers taught, the knowledge Lilith mastered. Chapter 7, Samiel, the union that shook heaven. Every rebellion needs an ally. Lilith found hers in the most unexpected place, not among the exiled gods of the desert, not among the Watchers, but within the heavenly court itself. His name was Samiel, the angel of death, the accuser, the left hand of God. In Jewish mysticism, Samiel is not Satan, though the two are sometimes conflated. Samiel is more complex. He is the angel who executes divine judgment, the one who tests humanity, the prosecutor in the cosmic courtroom. He is severe, uncompromising, necessary, and he is the one who chose Lilith. The Zohar describes their union in symbolic language. It speaks of a marriage between the feminine principle of rebellion and the masculine principle of severity. Together, they form a polarity that exists outside the divine plan. They are not opposed to God in the way Satan is in Christian theology. They are opposed to the structure God has established. They represent the possibility of an alternate order, a reality not based on submission, but on mutual recognition of power. This is why their union is called the most dangerous alliance in all of mystical literature, because it suggests that the current order is not inevitable. It can be challenged. It can be replaced. Samiel appears in several places in Jewish tradition. In the Talmud, he is the angel who tempts Eve in the garden, though not as a serpent. In the Apocalypse of Moses, he is the one who rides the serpent. In the Ascension of Isaiah, he is the ruler of this world, a figure of immense power who controls the material realm. He is not a rebel in the sense of being cast out. He is a rebel in the sense of operating according to his own interpretation of divine will. He believes that humanity must be tested, sharpened, made strong through adversity, and in Lilith, he found someone who had already passed the test. Their union was not romantic in the human sense. It was spiritual, a merging of purposes. Samiel represented the enforcement of consequences. Lilith represented the refusal to accept those consequences as final. Together, they created a third option, not obedience, not punishment, but transformation. Their offspring, according to legend, are not physical beings. They are influences, spirits that move through the world, disrupting certainty, provoking questions, undermining false peace. They are the whispers that make you doubt, the thoughts that will not be silenced, the feelings that something is deeply wrong with the way things are. Comment below if you have ever felt that whisper, that sense that the world you are supposed to accept is not the world that should be, because that whisper is the legacy of Samiel and Lilith. It is their gift to humanity, the refusal to be content with lies. In Christian demonology, Samiel is often equated with Lucifer or Satan, but this conflation erases important distinctions. Lucifer, in Isaiah 14, is a fallen king, not an angel. Satan, in Job, is a member of the divine council, not a rebel. Samiel is something else entirely. He is the shadow side of God, the part of the divine that is harsh, unyielding, and terrifying. Carl Jung would call him the shadow archetype, the part of the psyche that contains everything we reject about ourselves. Lilith's union with Samiel can be understood psychologically as well. It is the integration of the rejected self, the refusal to split reality into good and evil, light and dark. It is the embrace of wholeness, even when wholeness is uncomfortable. The Gnostics understood this. They taught that the material world was created by a flawed God, the demiurge, and that salvation comes through knowledge, not faith. Samiel, in some Gnostic texts, is a figure of Gnosis. He reveals the truth about the false God. He shows humanity that they are imprisoned, not by sin, but by ignorance. And Lilith, in this framework, is the first human to escape the prison. Her union with Samiel is not a fall. It is an ascension, a return to the true divine source beyond the demiurge's reach. There is a teaching in Kabbalah called the breaking of the vessels. It describes a catastrophic event at the beginning of creation, where divine light was too intense for the vessels meant to contain it. The vessels shattered. Sparks of divine light fell into the material world, trapped in shells of darkness. The task of humanity, according to this teaching, is tikkun olam, repairing the world, gathering the sparks, restoring the light. Lilith and Samiel, in their union, do not seek to repair the world. They seek to shatter it again, to break the false vessels, to release the sparks even if it means chaos, because they understand that some structures are too corrupt to be repaired. They must be destroyed so something new can emerge. Chapter 8. The Code Written in Shadows. Lilith left behind no scripture, no tablets, no commandments carved in stone. But she left something more powerful, a code, not written in words but in patterns, in symbols, in the structure of reality itself. This code is not something you read, it is something you feel. It activates in moments of crisis, when the choice between submission and freedom becomes unavoidable. It pulses in the heartbeat of everyone who has ever said, "I will not." It is the hidden frequency of rebellion, and once you tune into it, you cannot unhear it. The idea of a hidden code is not unique to Lilith's story. The Torah, according to Jewish tradition, contains infinite layers of meaning. The Zohar teaches that every letter, every space, every combination of words encodes divine secrets. Christian mystics speak of the Logos, the word that was with God and was God, the principle of divine reason underlying all creation. In Islam, the Quran is believed to be the literal speech of Allah, and its recitation is an act of divine encounter. Language is never just communication, it is invocation. It calls things into being, and the code Lilith left is a language of invocation. It calls forth the self that has been buried under fear and conditioning. Where is this code found? In nature. The cycles of the moon, which govern tides, fertility, and emotional rhythms. Lilith is associated with the dark moon, the phase when the moon is invisible. This is the time of introspection, of shadow work, of confronting what has been hidden. In astrology, the black moon Lilith is a calculated point, not a physical body. It represents the apogee of the moon's orbit, the point farthest from Earth. Symbolically, it is the place of exile, the place where you are most distant from the familiar, and it is also the place where you are most free. The code is also found in dreams. Carl Jung wrote about the collective unconscious, a layer of the psyche shared by all humanity, filled with archetypes, universal symbols that recur across cultures and time. Lilith is one of these archetypes. She appears in dreams as the wild woman, the sorceress, the seductress, the witch, not because she is evil, but because she represents the parts of the self that have been exiled, the desires, thoughts, and powers that society has told you are unacceptable. When Lilith appears in a dream, she is not there to harm you. She is there to remind you of what you have forgotten, your own sovereignty. Share this video if you have ever woken from a dream with a feeling that you were being shown something important, something that could change your life if you had the courage to follow it, because that feeling is the code activating. That is Lilith speaking. The code is encoded in sacred geometry, the flower of life, the seed of life, the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio. These patterns appear in nature, in art, in architecture. They are the blueprints of creation, but they also appear in mystical practices. The Kabbalistic tree of life, the Sri Yantra of Hinduism, the mandalas of Buddhism. These are maps of consciousness. They show the structure of reality and the path to transcendence. Lilith's code is woven into these patterns, not as a separate system, but as the underlying principle, the refusal to remain static, the drive toward evolution, the insistence that consciousness can expand beyond the limits imposed by any system. In Gnostic texts, there is a concept called the call from the beyond. It is the voice of the true God, the God beyond the demiurge, calling to the divine spark trapped in each human. This call is faint, easily drowned out by the noise of the world, but it is always there, and those who hear it begin the journey toward awakening. Lilith's code is that call. It is the signal from beyond the walls of the prison. It does not tell you what to do. It tells you that you can do, that you are not bound, that the door is not locked. You just have to turn the handle. Some esoteric traditions teach that Lilith's code can be learned through ritual, through meditation, through the study of sacred texts that were excluded from the canon. The Nag Hammadi library, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Gnostic Gospels. These texts were buried, hidden, suppressed, but they survived, and in their survival they carry the code. They teach that salvation is not granted by authority, it is claimed by the individual, that gnosis, knowledge, is the path, that the divine is not distant, it is within, and accessing it requires not obedience but awakening. Chapter 9. The three who could not bring her back when Lilith left Eden. God did not pursue her himself. He sent 3 angels, Senoi, Sanzanoi, and Semangeloth. Their names are recorded in the alphabet of Ben Sira and in various Jewish amulets used for centuries. They were not warriors. They were negotiators, messengers. Their mission was not to destroy Lilith, but to convince her to return. This is significant. It suggests that even God, or at least the God of Eden, recognized that force would not work. Lilith had to choose to return, and she did not. The angels found her by the Red Sea, a place associated with chaos and danger in biblical symbolism. The Red Sea is where the Israelites crossed to escape Egypt, where Pharaoh's army was drowned. It is a boundary between slavery and freedom. Lilith was on the far side, free, alone, unbound. The angels delivered their message: return to Adam, submit to the order of Eden, resume your role, and in exchange, all will be forgiven. You will be restored, you will be safe. It was a reasonable offer. From their perspective, it was mercy. But Lilith refused. Her refusal was not emotional, it was not defiant for the sake of defiance, it was principled. She explained that she could not return because returning would mean erasing herself. It would mean accepting that her awakening had been a mistake, that equality was an illusion, that her will was irrelevant. She could not do that, not because she was stubborn, but because she had seen the truth. And once you see the truth, you cannot pretend you did not. The angels could not understand this. They operated within a system where truth was handed down from above. The idea that truth could be discovered from within was foreign to them. So they moved to consequences. They told her that if she did not return, her children would die. 100 of them every day for eternity. This curse is one of the most chilling elements of her story. It is a threat designed to exploit the one thing that might compel her maternal instinct. But Lilith's children, as we have discussed, were not physical. They were spiritual. They were ideas, impulses, awakenings. And ideas cannot be killed by decree. They can only be suppressed, and suppression always fails eventually. Lilith accepted the curse. She understood that her legacy would be persecuted. But she also understood that persecution does not erase, it amplifies. Every attempt to silence her would only prove her point. Like this video, if you have ever been told that standing up for yourself will bring consequences, and you chose to stand anyway, because that is what Lilith did. She counted the cost and paid it willingly, and in doing so, she became eternal. The angels returned to Eden without her. Their failure is recorded. And their failure is important because it establishes a precedent. There are beings, powers, and wills that cannot be controlled, even by heaven. Lilith was the first, but she would not be the last. The Watchers would descend. Humanity would eat the fruit. The flood would fail to erase corruption. The Tower of Babel would rise. Again and again, creation would resist the boundaries placed on it. And every time the resistance would be called sin. But what if it was not sin? What if it was evolution? In Jewish folklore, the 3 angels' names became protective charms. Amulets inscribed with their names were placed in homes, especially in birthing rooms, to ward off Lilith. The belief was that she, bitter over the curse, would harm infants in retaliation. But there is another interpretation. Perhaps the amulets were not to protect children from Lilith. Perhaps they were to protect the system from Lilith's influence, to prevent the awakening she represented from spreading to the next generation. Because if children grew up hearing her story, they might ask questions. They might refuse their assigned roles. They might lead their own Adams. The confrontation between Lilith and the three angels is a confrontation between two worldviews. The angels represent the belief that order must be maintained, that authority must be respected, that the individual must sacrifice for the collective. Lilith represents the belief that order is only legitimate if it honors the dignity of every being, that authority must earn respect, that the collective cannot demand the erasure of the individual. Both worldviews have merit, but only one allows for freedom. And Lilith chose freedom, not just for herself, for everyone who would come after her. Her refusal was a gift, an opening, a possibility, and that is why her story survives. Because we need it. We need to know that refusal is possible, that consequences can be endured, that freedom is worth the cost. Chapter 10. The curse that became power. Every curse carries within it the seed of blessing. The angels cursed Lilith. 100 of her children would perish daily. She would be called demon, seductress, destroyer. Her name would be synonymous with danger. Mothers would fear her. Priests would condemn her. Scholars would erase her. For millennia, this curse seemed to hold. Lilith became a figure of terror. But curses, like all forms of concentrated attention, have a way of backfiring. Because to curse something is to acknowledge its power. And the more you curse, the more you reveal how much you fear. The curse on Lilith did not destroy her. It enshrined her. It made her immortal. In Jewish tradition, Lilith became the queen of demons. She was said to roam the night, preying on men in their sleep, causing nocturnal emissions and stealing infants. These accusations are horrifying, but they are also revealing. They locate evil not in violence or cruelty, but in female sexuality and autonomy. Lilith's crime was not murder, it was independence. She was cursed because she would not submit, and the form of the curse, sexual danger, harm to children, reflects the deepest fears of a patriarchal society. That women, if not controlled, will disrupt the family structure. That female desire, if not suppressed, will lead to chaos. The curse is a confession. It admits that the system depends on the submission of women, and Lilith threatened that foundation. But Lilith's image was not monolithic. In other traditions, she was seen differently. In certain Kabbalistic schools, she was understood as a necessary force. The shadow side of the Shekinah, the feminine presence of God. The Shekinah is nurturing, protective, immanent. Lilith is wild, untamed, transcendent. Together, they form the full spectrum of the feminine divine. One cannot exist without the other. To reject Lilith is to reject half of the sacred feminine, and to reject half is to create imbalance. This is why, in some mystical practices, Lilith is invoked not as a demon, but as a teacher. She teaches boundaries. She teaches the power of no. She teaches that the sacred is not only gentle, sometimes it is fierce. In modern feminist spirituality, Lilith has been reclaimed. She is celebrated as the first woman to demand equality, the first to walk away from an abusive situation, the first to prioritize her own dignity over social expectation. She is the patron of survivors, of those who have been silenced, of those who refuse to be diminished. Her curse has become her crown. What was meant to shame her has become the source of her power, because shame only works if you accept it, and Lilith never did. Subscribe now if you have ever been labeled, cursed, or condemned for refusing to play a role that diminished you, because you are part of Lilith's lineage, and that lineage is not a curse, it is a calling. The number 100 is significant. In biblical numerology, 100 represents completeness, fullness. The curse that 100 of Lilith's children would die daily is a curse of totality. It is meant to suggest absolute defeat, but it also suggests absolute persistence. If 100 die every day, it means there are always more. The lineage is endless. The awakening cannot be stopped. For every person who is silenced, another awakens. For every story that is erased, another is told. the curse guarantees that Lilith's presence will never fade, because the powers that cursed her are forced to fight her forever. And as long as they fight, they acknowledge. And acknowledgement is a form of survival. There is a psychological dimension to this as well. Carl Jung taught that the shadow, the repressed parts of the psyche, does not disappear. It goes underground. It influences from the unconscious. It emerges in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in compulsions and obsessions. The more you repress, the more powerful the shadow becomes. Lilith is the shadow of Eden, the repressed truth of the creation story. And the more she is cursed, the more she infiltrates the collective unconscious. She appears in art, in literature, in film. She is the dark fairy tale, the powerful witch, the woman who will not be tamed. Every generation reinvents her, because every generation needs her. She is the proof that the system is not absolute, that there is another way. The transformation of curse into power is not unique to Lilith. It is a pattern that appears throughout history. The term witch was meant to destroy women who were healers, midwives, herbalists. But today, witch is reclaimed as a badge of honor. The term queer was a slur. Now it is a proud identity. The term nasty woman was an insult. Now it is a rallying cry. Language is a weapon. But weapons can be taken from the hand of the oppressor and turned into tools of liberation. Lilith understood this. She accepted the curse and transformed it. She wore the label of demon and made it sacred, and in doing so, she taught us that no one can define you but yourself. Chapter 11, The Black Mirror and the Truth Behind the Throne. There is one final revelation in Lilith's story, the deepest secret, the one that explains everything. It is the vision she saw in the black mirror, not the mirror of fire where she first recognized her equality, but another mirror, a darker one, a mirror that reflects not what is, but what is hidden. In this mirror, Lilith saw the structure of reality itself, and what she saw was not what she had been taught. She saw that the God of Eden was not the supreme God. He was a creator, yes, but not the creator. He was one among many, and the reality he built was not the only reality. It was a single story among infinite stories, and that story, like all stories, could be rewritten. This is the most controversial teaching associated with Lilith. It appears most clearly in Gnostic texts, where the God of the Old Testament is identified as the demiurge. The demiurge is not evil, but he is ignorant. He believes himself to be the only God. He creates a world and demands worship. But above him, unknown to him, is the true God, the pleroma, the fullness, the source from which all emanates. The demiurge creates boundaries, laws, hierarchies. The pleroma offers only freedom. The goal of the spiritual life in Gnosticism is to escape the demiurge's creation and return to the pleroma. And the first step is recognizing that you are trapped. Lilith recognized it. In the black mirror, she saw the throne of Eden. And behind the throne, she saw emptiness, or not emptiness, space, infinite space. The throne was not the center. It was a single point in a vastness that had no center. The God who sat on that throne had power, yes, but his power was local, limited, conditional. He could create a garden. He could establish rules, he could curse and bless, but he could not create the principles that made creation possible. Those principles came from elsewhere, from a source he did not control and perhaps did not even comprehend. And once Lilith saw this, everything changed. Because if God is not absolute, then his commands are not absolute. They are suggestions, options, one path among many. This teaching is dangerous for obvious reasons. If people believe that the authority they are told to obey is not ultimate, then obedience becomes optional. The entire structure of religious, political, and social control depends on the belief that authority is divinely ordained, that the hierarchy reflects cosmic order, that to resist is to sin. But if the cosmos is not hierarchical, if the true divine is beyond hierarchy, then resistance is not sin. It is alignment. It is the return to truth. Lilith's vision in the Black Mirror is the ultimate heresy, and it is also, according to her followers, the ultimate truth. Comment below with one word: mirror, if you have ever sensed that the reality you were taught is incomplete, that there is something more, something hidden, something that, if you saw it, would change everything, because that sense is the Black Mirror calling, and you are closer to it than you think. The Black Mirror appears in other traditions as well, though under different names. In alchemy, it is the Nidrido, the blackening, the stage of decomposition where the false self is dissolved so the true self can emerge. In shamanism, it is the journey to the underworld, the descent into darkness where the shaman confronts death and returns with forbidden knowledge. In psychology, it is the dark night of the soul, the crisis that destroys your illusions and forces you to rebuild your understanding of reality from the ground up. The Black Mirror is not a place. It is a process. It is what happens when you stop believing the story you were told and start seeking the truth for yourself. What did Lilith do with this knowledge? She could have despaired. She could have become nihilistic. If the God of Eden is not ultimate, then perhaps nothing is ultimate. Perhaps there is no meaning, no purpose, no hope. But Lilith did not fall into nihilism. She moved into creation. She understood that if there is no ultimate authority, then every being is sovereign. Every consciousness is a creator. Reality is not fixed. It is participatory. We are not passive recipients of a divine plan. We are active co-authors of existence, and the meaning we seek is not given to us. We make it. This is the final teaching of the Black Mirror. You are not here to obey. You are here to create. Lilith left clues, symbols, whispers. She encoded her teaching in myths, in dreams, in the patterns of nature. She knew that most people would not be ready to hear it, but she also knew that some would, and for those few, the clues would be enough. They would find the Black Mirror. They would see what she saw, and they would make the same choice she made, not to return to the garden, not to submit to the throne, but to step into the vastness beyond, to claim their sovereignty, to create their own reality. And every time someone makes that choice, Lilith's work continues. She is not a demon. She is not a myth. She is a pattern, a frequency, a call. And the call is always the same. You are free. You have always been free. The only question is whether you will act like it. The story of Lilith does not end. It cannot end, because it is not a story about one woman in one garden in one ancient time. It is a story about every person who has ever been told to be small and chose to be vast. Every person who has been told to obey and chose to question. Every person who has been cursed and turned the curse into a crown. Her story is your story, and your story is just beginning. Share this video if you are ready to step into the Black Mirror, to see what has been hidden, to claim what has always been yours, because the truth is not out there, it is in you, and it is time to remember.